Welcome to Keen on Retirement, a show dedicated to helping you thrive before and during your retirement years. If you are looking to grow and protect your wealth and want to make the second half of your life the best half, then listen in as Wealth Advisor Bill Keen sorts through the key issues that you need to know in a lively and candid way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Keen on Retirement. I'm your co-host, Steve, and I have Bill and Matt with me. Guys, how you doing on this fine, warm summer day?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're doing good. Steve, I wonder if the temperatures in your neck of the woods are like ours lately. They've been up around 100, high 90s, Matt, something like that here.
Yeah.
In the last few weeks.
I know it's been hot.
Yeah, it's been warm. Of course, we complain when it's snowing, and guess we can complain now, but we're not really complaining. But what's the temps like your neck of the woods?
Well, today we are supposed to hit about 95, which is a little warm for Oregon. But we'll take it. Yeah. So while it is summer here, down under, it's actually wintertime. And
yes.
So it is. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about President Trump. We're going to talk about Australia. And we're going to talk about retirement savings. And we're going to find a way to connect all three of those so that it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Is this a World Cup theme, Steve?
Well, we finished the World Cup here, didn't we? So congratulations to Spain on a great final game there. Yeah, Argentina, they didn't look all that great in that final match, but they had a great tournament, and Spain did a fantastic job. So congratulations to the Spanish team.
Or you could say that Spain's defense was so good, Argentina just couldn't do anything about it.
It was just, I watched the game as you guys probably did as well, and it was really, really fascinating to see just how well Spain controlled the ball. And I think their time of possession just dramatically outshined Argentina. And they had, what did they have, like 20 plus shots on goal? And Argentina
like 28
had
at one point to Argentina's none.
None.
Toward the end of the game, they had no
right
shot.
toward the end of the game. Exactly. Yeah. So they just really dominated, even though the final score didn't show the domination, but they certainly dominated during the match. But it was a great event.
Wouldn't that have been something had they went to the, I guess it's called penalty kick, right?
The
for
shootout.
The game at the end?
Yeah.
If Argentina could have pulled it off after being completely dominated like that and still won. Of course they didn't, but it was just a thought experiment that I was having at the moment, watching.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, Kansas City, a big deal for Kansas City hosting some of the games there. And you mentioned that Argentina, that they picked Kansas City as their home base for training.
They did.
And England, I think, too.
England,
that's right.
Some top teams. Different theories out there as to why. I think some facilities are probably good enough for them, so that was part of it. But a lot less distractions, I would say, in Kansas City than there would be in New York or LA or somewhere like that. So keep the players focused on the task at hand, which is winning their match.
Right. Are you saying we're boring here in the Midwest, Matt?
No,
what are you
just
saying?
Less, there's a lot less people to distract you too. Which is true.
That's fair.
You're not going to have paparazzi showing up everywhere in Kansas City.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's that Midwest nice. So
that's right. Yeah.
And I thought we did a great job. Like, honestly, Kansas City did a great job hosting.
Yeah.
And I think all the cities in the U.S. did a good job, but Kansas City did a great job. I think we were gracious hosts, and we didn't really hear of any troubles.
Good. What did you think of the halftime show?
Yeah, I took in some of it. You'll laugh, but I was actually at the gym in the Lake of the Ozarks, because I do spend a lot of time. Chris and I share that passion, I guess, and we like to go to the gym. So she actually had a bench moved over in the gym in front of the big screen TV. We thought she was going to get admonished by the gym owner there, but she didn't. So she was doing her weights on the bench in front of the big screen. They have a big screen at the gym there at the Ozarks. And so I was going back and forth between sets watching, but she called me in and said, get in here and watch this halftime show. People are going to be talking about it. So I thought it was good. Did you think it was good, Steve?
Well, I thought it was different in the sense that one of the reasons why I like the Super Bowl halftime shows usually is that they have a single performer. So they get an iconic performer who does an amazing job, whether it's a Prince or a Michael Jackson, a Bruce Springsteen, a Paul McCartney, Rolling Stones, one of these iconic bands that we grew up with.
Yes.
And they put on a set and an amazing show. And I think with the World Cup, they were trying to be all things to all people because it is a worldwide event, right? And they've got a lot of different constituencies. So I think it felt a little bit disjointed from that standpoint, that you had so many different types of genres and everybody only had a couple minutes. And so it was sort of head spinning. But I think all the performers were amazing and the choreography was amazing. The color was amazing. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I think it was great. I think my preference would be, though, to have like one iconic singer that the show revolves around. And oftentimes those people may bring in one or two other people to help sort of supplement it, but you're still sort of there for that iconic singer or band.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, we'll inform
I'm sure
FIFA.
they'll accept that feedback, Steve.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure they're going to get that, right? We'll send it right to the president of FIFA here. So, all right. Well, before we go down more rabbit holes here, let's kind of get to the topic at hand here, which is, and Bill, maybe you want to start us off here. So President Trump had made some comments here recently that tie into something going on in Australia and tie into retirement savings. So how does that all work?
Yeah, well, you all might remember I shared probably about 6 months ago on the program that I had been to, Carissa and I and some of the kids had been to Australia for a couple of weeks, really over late December into the new year, seeing Carissa's sister who lives in Australia. She's an attorney there, and her husband is a prominent businessman, and they have a great family there. And we were able to experience, Brisbane and then Gold Coast, you might have recalled. And I was talking about driving from the right side of the car on the opposite side of the road and some of the travels that we had there at the time. But the one thing I did bring up too was a little bit about their retirement program. So I wanted to learn, and Matt and we know one of our colleagues here in the industry actually is Australian financial advisor. They have, I think, offices, Matt, in Brisbane and several other the major Melbourne and several other major cities there in Australia, and really understanding and thinking about how they think about retirement there. And there's a couple of the program that I was really interested in. There's one of them is called an old age pension. I believe it's called old age pension, isn't it, Matt? And I remembered that right. And that's actually something that is truly means tested. Now, like in the U.S., Medicare, I would call means tested for the IRMA surcharges, where they means test around income here. In Australia, the old age pension is means tested for income and also for assets, which is not something that we're doing yet. I say yet, I mean, maybe never, but here in the United States, where the government is actually looking at someone's net worth, not just their income from their tax return, to determine what benefits they may or may not qualify for. So the old age pension is something there that it is based on income and assets. And a word that I learned there that's used quite often in Australia is the word fortnight. Do you know what fortnight is? I'm just going to do a little quiz here with you two. Do you know what fortnight is?
It's a period of time. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. All right. So Steve didn't even have. I could see you weren't typing.
I wasn't. No, I didn't know. No AI here, man.
Okay. Well, I love it. So the means test is an income's assessed, but for looking at financial assets for this old age pension, and you can earn up to $200. This is today's rules now. Up to $226 per fortnight for a single person, or $396 per fortnight for a couple before your pension starts reducing there in Australia. And then the assets test evaluates what you own, including the other aspect to the retirement plan, which is called superannuation, which we're going to talk about today, because this is why we're tying Trump in, because he's mentioned this now in the United States as something to consider. That vehicles, investment properties, generally exempts the primary residence, but for a full pension, the assets limit range there is about $333,000. I'm assuming that's in Australian dollars for a single, and about $500,000 for a couple. So those are some of the means tests for the old age pension before you start getting phased out, I suppose. But the superannuation is something that was really interesting to me, and that's what I think that Trump has brought up here, and something that I think is going to be relevant to talk about in a little more detail than I just basically skimmed across in our episode there in January.
Yeah. Yeah, I really where this came from. I saw an article and the headline was, "The White House wants to copy Australia's retirement system." And when I first read it, I think I thought it said Austria for some reason. And then I clicked on it and I'm like, oh no, Australia. Yeah, I've heard about this. One from our colleague, and I remember Bill talking about it. And what do they call it? They actually don't call it the superannuation, right? They just refer to it as what?
Our friends in Australia, they like to shorten a lot of the words. Like sunglasses are called sunnies. I have a litany of other ones, but this one they just call it the super. They just speak about the super.
So if you ever hear anyone talking about the super, that's what they refer to.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what President Trump actually said was, he made these remarks at the Rose Garden where he said, "We're looking at it very strongly, and we're going to be taking that and we're going to be making it a little bit sharper, a little bit even better." That's what he said verbatim.
That's Trump speak.
Yeah. Okay. I know everything's always got to be better. Hey, no reason not to. We don't want to make it worse. Let's make it better.
Right.
Yeah. And he framed it as a program for grown-ups. And because he was also speaking about the Trump accounts, which are for children. So, of course, that's why he said that. But right now, it is 100% a concept. So there's no bill out there. Nothing is even up for vote at this point. But hey, it's on his mind and could be in the works potentially for Congress to work on, and definitely some senators. He has asked or provided the Treasury Secretary Scott Bassett and the and Lutnick too, who is that's the Commerce Secretary, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Believe
so he's asked them, the task force. They're going to be researching it. Going into all the details, trying to figure out how this could potentially work. But let's, we'll talk through kind of what that means and really why they're even bringing it up. Because why would we even be talking about this? We have Social Security here in the United States. That's, actually it's pretty good, but, we do know that there is a savings shortfall. And, as much as 401k plans have become better over the decades since they were created, and education around the power of saving, all the education that we do. And I mean, we're not the only ones that are out there trying to teach people on the power of just putting in a little bit of money and how much it can compound over your lifetime as you get ready for retirement. It's just not everyone participates. And not everyone has access to 401ks either. That is a thing. It's just kind of there for bigger corporations and corporations that are really focused on providing that benefit, and not every business does. So let's talk about what this super is and how that could potentially maybe bridge a gap with this savings shortfall. So what the super in Australia. So you mentioned the pension, which is really, it's kind of like their version of Social Security.
That's
Numbers are a lot less, it sounds like, than what we're commonly seeing among our client base and what they're receiving from Social Security. And of course, the means testing, which doesn't necessarily apply on Social Security. There is a taxable portion that does get means tested, so to speak, but it doesn't reduce your benefit, just counts more of it towards your income for tax purposes. But what the super does is it requires employers to contribute 12% of your pay into a worker-owned portable retirement account. So let's think about that. So basically, they are putting 12%, like this is the way I would compare it to what we have here in the US. They're taking 12% of your paycheck and they're putting it into an IRA that you control and it's in your name. And the fact what portable means is whether you can move it. I mean, once you leave that company and go somewhere else, it's yours.
That's right.
So, okay. I mean, this has been a while. I think it was under President Bush, where this was, the second Bush, where he was kind of talking about the private accounts for Social Security. And, maybe that's been floated a few times during some of the presidential elections, but really, was a non-starter, didn't get anywhere. This would be a similar concept, I would say. These supers, they're essentially kind of locked to age 60 again. So it's like similar to the IRA. You can't really touch it until you're 59 and a half. Yeah, you can, but there's penalties and, reasons not to, taxes and all that. You can access it at 60 if you're retired. At 65, it's yours completely. So, kind of, again, a lot of similarities between these different programs between the Australia and the United States.
You know what I'm really interesting though about it, and maybe I'm stealing your thunder though, is lump sum distributions or income coming out of the super in Australia after age 60 are tax free.
Yeah, that is a real, which is another reason, I guess. I didn't dig in that much in terms of like if you can access it, because we're not necessarily advising people on what their supers are because we're not in Australia.
Right.
But I'm sure you can, and there's probably massive penalties and reasons not to. But that's the benefit is they're saying by not doing that, you get this tax-free benefit, which is great. But I do think your money. I mean, it's money that was put in there on
right. But I do think you get taxed on the way in, though.
Yes.
When I was doing some reading,
as your income. Yeah.
But it's not taxed at necessarily your normal tax rate. I think it's more like a flat 15% or something. So it's tax light is how I saw it described.
Yeah. So
there is some tax going in, but for the most part, not tax going out. There's a little bit of means testing, I think, maybe on the way out. But what I find interesting about all of this is there could be some really creative things that could be done here that I think could really help out American savers. So as you guys have mentioned, obviously we've got Social Security today. One of the things that's wonderful about Social Security is it's a lifetime thing, right? So doesn't matter how much you put in. If you live to 150, it's still going to be paying out to 150. So you can never run
cost of living increase.
Right. Yeah. So you can never run out of it. Now contrast that with the super. It's not an annuity-like payment. It means you've got this lump sum of money and it can continue to grow over time. But if you start taking out a whole bunch of money, it's going to go to zero. So it's not like there's a lifetime guaranteed income that you can get from that. So I think that's a little different.
Yeah. Well, just like your IRA.
Right. Exactly. But where I think things could get really interesting here, and maybe this is what Trump is thinking about because they floated this idea too, is this idea of like this national so Norway's got this national wealth fund, and the state of Alaska has a state wealth fund that's funded from a lot of the oil revenues. And I think every Alaska resident gets thousands of dollars per year as a payment from this Alaska fund. Norway, I think, is kind of similar. So Trump and the administration have been talking about this idea of a national wealth thing. So, I mean, we could get creative and say, well, if we do that, and I think the idea is you seed the fund with some of the equity from some of the big AI companies, and sort of the logic there is, well, if these AI companies are going to be taking away all the jobs, well, let's let the people who are losing their jobs get a piece of the growth of these companies to sort of replace some of their income. So give a chunk of those AI company stock to the U.S. government, put it in a national fund, and then start doling out that money to all Americans so that they can participate in the growth of this. So if you did create a fund like this, you could, that national wealth fund that they're talking about creating, use some of that money to put into our version of the super, get corporations require them to contribute X percent into it as well. So, if we really want to be creative, there's opportunities out there to do stuff like that has never been done in our country. So, and I'm not sure what I just described is necessarily the best idea, but it's an idea. And it's like, yeah, let's talk about this kind of stuff, because clearly there's a lot of people out there that are falling behind. AI absolutely could be a huge threat to a lot of people. And so let's try and get ahead of the curve here and figure out what can we do to make sure that, we don't end up with a much bigger problem on our hands with a lot of people unemployed and no ability to retrain them for the new world. So anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
But sounds like you're talking about a sovereign wealth fund, Steve.
Sovereign wealth. That was the word I was looking for, but it wasn't on the tip of my tongue.
And, next thing we know, we're going to have the U.S. sovereign wealth fund own the sports teams, just like the Saudi Arabian sovereign wealth fund and everything else is owning pieces of U.S. based businesses and assets too. So,
and and the downside of all that is the opportunity for corruption and favoritism and
they're not going to be fiduciaries, Steve.
Right? If only.
Yeah.
So in that arrangement, do they just take stock from the AI companies? Just say sorry.
Well, they would phrase it and frame it much differently than that. It would be a tax, of course.
A tax. Okay.
It'd be like a license to probably have your AI agent. You've got to pay this licensing fee, which funds that, of course.
Well, Sam Altman, who's one of the founders of OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, he's been talking to the government, I think, for over a year now, saying, "Hey, we'll contribute 5% of our organization's stock to this sovereign wealth fund." So now he has a lot of different motives, I think, for offering that. He wants favorable treatment from the government as well. Yeah. But yeah, so there's things like that could possibly happen. So yeah, it's a very different world that we live in from the world that I think the three of us and many of our listeners grew up in terms of just how the system works. And I do think we're going to need some creative ideas because it's changing fast. A lot of people are going to get left behind if we're not careful about how all this stuff unfolds. So we've got to figure out how to make sure that we don't end up with a real significant problem on our hands.
That's right. Well, and and the reason why this is even being discussed and Steve, like you're talking about too, not only just what's the future look like with workforce and jobs and everything else, but it is well, we can see we do have this savings problem, and we have Social Security, which is good, but Social Security has its own issues too, and it's a tax. It's a worker funded tax that over time is going to run out of money. The math is pretty clear on that, and actually the trustees report came out in June, comes out basically June every year, where the trustees of the Social Security Administration, specifically of the trust funds, they look at all the math behind it and say, okay, and here's, based on our projections, I mean, anyone go download it and they can look at the entire report, look at all the math behind it. You can really dig deep with it. And they do publish a summary too. So you can skim kind of the high notes or high points there. But right now, the Social Security Trust Fund is set to be depleted in Q4 of 2032. That's not that far away. When it was first really being discussed a lot, I mean, I could remember this 10, 15 years ago. I was like, well, that's pretty far in the future. We're talking 6 years now. And what they have said is at that time, then 78% of the scheduled benefits would be payable from ongoing payroll taxes. Now, they aren't saying, and no one has said this, but this is what is inferred is that, okay, well, I'm only going to get 78% of my benefit. What they're saying is that the inflows from the payroll tax, which is how they pay for it, the work base, is only going to cover 78%. And the difference would have to be made up by the government somehow, which typically at this stage would just be more debt, which is not uncommon to a lot of things that they do. So that's where the state of the Social Security trust funds are. So what this Australia type system isn't, and I don't think President Trump is looking at this as a replacement for Social Security. What I think it is it's a supplement. And, it's right now, again, it's just an idea that was brought up during a speech, not necessarily, anything super, very concrete at this point. But just, okay, how can we, again, increase the ability for Americans as they get older, able to live comfortably in retirement? And because we know the numbers, the math, it's like not everyone is prepared for retirement. And again, the Social Security has its own issues. But what are the common levers that the Social Security trust funds can pull? Because, we have a lot of Americans that are looking at Social Security as part of their retirement plan, or that is their only component of their retirement plan. And we're concerned about it. I mean, I don't know of any client that, when I've asked them, have said they're not worried about it. I mean, maybe a few just kind of like, well, whatever. They don't necessarily have an opinion and aren't sitting there losing sleep over it. But hey, is your plan going to be as good as it is right now if something happened to Social Security? And that's something that we can stress test for, and we commonly do, just to know how dependent upon Social Security is your financial plan. And that's again, there's a lot of people, I wouldn't say are dependent upon it, but it is a source, and it is an important source.
And Matt, I'll attribute this, we talk about listener questions here a lot. And I'm going to attribute this one to Philip, our good friend and client, Philip, who raised an article to our attention. And of course, there's a lot of them going around now, articles online and different things. So others have also brought it up. But so if you think about what's on the top of mind, when we first launched this show 11 years ago, we said we were going to make a look behind the curtain on what we're seeing day to day in our fiduciary financial advisory practice. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've done. But Philip did bring this to our attention, so I want to give him credit for the question. But we really get the question. I probably had it 60 times. Everybody asks. So we meet with a lot of people, right? So
I know
it's on everyone's mind.
Well, and usually the next question is, why isn't Congress doing anything about this? And one, it is in Congress world, 6 years in the future is pretty far, because they're usually just concerned about this year. They got to, again, create the budget, balance the budget, supposedly keep it in budget, which again, as we know, doesn't happen. But every fix, really does involve a tax increase or a benefit change. And, the people in Congress know, well, that usually is going to upset somebody. You can't really have a win-win if I don't increase taxes, that means I have to change what people are receiving or will receive in the future. So how do we fix this without impacting the least amount of people as possible?
So Matt, is this going to happen in the first year of a new administration? Like before you're getting close to midterms? Is this what's going to have to happen? Just from the standpoint of the political blowback?
Well, what I think will happen is, assuming we're still at Q4 2032, we'll get a solution in Q4 2032.
Okay.
And that's what history has taught us, that usually the fixes come right when they are required to happen. And it has happened with Social Security. This isn't the first time the trust funds have been in this situation. 1983, Congress had 6 months until they were out of money. And I would guess at the time, I was 2 years old, so I wasn't paying attention to this, but I would guess at the time the people in Congress knew about that. That didn't just show up on their desk one day like, what? Where did all the money go? Well, we got to figure this out. And the solution in 83 was to increase the full retirement age, was 65. They increased to age 67, but that didn't happen overnight. That took several decades for that to phase in. But the big change, was Social Security was completely tax-free up until that point, and they decided, okay, we're going to have to count some of this as income, and that's when they instituted the calculation that they use for provisional income, which is how some people get zero tax on Social Security. Some of it, half of it counts as income and then flows through the tax brackets, and then others is 85% of it counts as income. That's when they created that, that whole process, 1983. Now, well, here's what the solutions can be today, or at least here's the levers. Increase the payroll tax. Right now it's 12.4%, which, hey, surprisingly, we heard 12% earlier from Australia. There's a lot of similarities here.
Yes, there is. Oh, and speaking of Australia, our friends, our family there in Australia who are smart and folks that are well informed.
They're listeners of the show.
Yes, they are. They're viewers, actually. They actually watch some of our shows on their television on the YouTube channel, which is thriving, by the way. But they alerted me to the fact that the political talk in Australia has been now taxation of the super.
Oh, I'm sure.
To some extent. So we're not the only ones. It's interesting. Like the nuances are different, but a lot of these things, well, you have dollars, you have people's life expectancies, you have investment returns.
Yeah, they're all changing.
What people need to live on. So we're all on this planet working with the same input variables and how to make them last and make sure folks are taken care of.
Yeah. Well, as I kind of joke, we don't know the date of death. If we did and everyone knew that, planning would be a lot easier and they could figure a lot of these things out. But we don't have that information. So, and the solution isn't indefinite either. Like that's the big thing with Social Security is they look for solutions that are 50, 75 years, not, okay, we'll never have to talk about Social Security ever again if we do this.
Enough to satisfy everybody alive today, basically.
Well, and it's because if they came up with the indefinite solution when Social Security was first rolled out, I was like, well, that probably solution isn't going to work anymore.
That's right.
Because no one could have predicted where we're at. But back to these levers. So that payroll tax, 12.4%, which half of it you put in as an employee, the other half your employer puts in. So that's what funds it. And then that counts, that payroll tax only applies on your first $184,500 of wages, which is per person. So married couple doesn't matter, that's per person. One lever they could do is increase the payroll tax. Another, or a combination of these, would be to eliminate that wage cap. Another one is increase the full retirement age. Right now it's 67. They could potentially move it towards 68, 69, 70. Those are all things that are possible. Change the cost of living calculation. Like maybe there's a cap each year. Instead of just floating based on whatever the CPI calculation says the cost of living increase should be, maybe they say, well, it will be no more than 3% if it so happens that it's higher than that. All possibilities. Right now, if they did want to just use the payroll tax to close the gap, it would have to increase from 12.4 to 16.6%. So you can see it's a pretty big increase in terms of percentage wise. Each W-2 employee would see a 2% tax. It doesn't matter how much money you make. That applies to everybody. So that's a tax increase across the board. Anyway, I think it's interesting to think about these. And again, none of them are on the table. Like Congress isn't voting on any of those solutions. Those are all just proposed, or at least part of the trustees report. They just list out, well, if we were to do that, here's what that would look like, because they know what these levers are. And they kind of throw them out there as these are things that we're looking at to suggest to Congress as levers they could pull.
So Matt, you think about, this is wonderful, a wonderful summary. And you think about, again, going back to Philip and his legitimate question, right? Like, well, if we're going to be, our benefits are going to be reduced as this thing runs out.
Should we take it now then?
Should we go ahead and take it earlier? Should we reevaluate our strategies?
Yeah.
And of course, with our modeling, with our all the things that we look at, very intricate intersection of all the different moving parts in a financial plan, well, we can go ahead and look at that. I mean, we can model it very easily and
Yes.
see, well, would it, well, okay, no, it wouldn't blow up your plan. Your plan is going to still work if you took it 2 or 3 years earlier than what we had projected. But then the question is, all right, so we know that you could take it either way. You're going to be okay. You're not going to run out of money. But then just to get out ahead of it, do you go ahead and make that decision, or is that something we would advise against? In that case, at this point, we're advising against changing strategies right now based on this unknown. And we always tell folks, you got to talk to your own personal financial advisor. If you're not with Keen, if you're with us, talk to us. But this isn't specific advice for each individual listening right now. But generally, we're not changing strategies out of fear for people losing benefits.
Yeah, and that's
based on this at this point.
I don't really think it's an option that Congress is going to adopt to just say, nope, we're not changing anything except everyone gets that haircut, 22% right off the top, across the board. You'd have to believe that is truly not just a 5%, like a real solution that you think is going to happen to justify making that decision. And when I walk people kind of through that, they usually say, okay, that probably isn't going to happen, because they have these other levers, like increasing the full retirement age. That impacts people. That's a change to how the current rules work. If they look at it as similarly to how they did in 1983 and phased it in over multiple decades, now that wouldn't necessarily be the only lever they'd have to pull, but it is definitely one of them. I don't know how many of the voting base that would impact. So we're talking people that are probably in their 30s or younger now are voting based on Social Security.
True.
So I think Congress does realize that. Those are things that we can look at that are going to have the least amount of impact to all of our constituents. Not just what benefits me or what benefits our wealthiest people. Whatever. They just how can we create a solution that helps everybody?
And don't you think that most people would, or a good consortium of people would think that it's something that we should be doing and that it's positive making these changes?
Sure.
Generally?
Just like you think Congress is always looking out for your best interest and everyone's a fiduciary. I don't know how many people are going to say, I'm willing to give up something for the benefit of humanity. There are some. I'm just saying, I think across the board, I don't know how many voters are looking at every solution that way.
See, that's my Pollyanna. I have an optimistic look about humanity, Steve.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the way to go through life because, if you're not optimistic, it's like you're just not going to enjoy it. I don't think that's a good strategy
trust
there.
But verify, yes, but we're also going to make sure we're protected.
Right. Yeah. And I would agree with both of you in terms of, I don't think the government is going to cut benefits on Social Security. So I think clearly it's either going to be stay where it is, no cuts, and they're going to plug the holes. So they're going to figure out how to do that. I have no doubt about that. I'm not going to guarantee it because we don't guarantee things here, but I'm pretty confident that something's going to get shored up there. What I also think is interesting, and this is purely hypothetical and speculative on my part, but since we were talking about AI and what that may do to jobs and everything, it's like over the next few years, I think we're going to see pretty clearly the impact that AI will have. Now, it could turn out that it creates more jobs overall.
Exactly.
And not less jobs. I mean, historically, that's what technology has done. And maybe this is going to continue that pattern. Other people say, well, no, it's going to be the job apocalypse and we're going to lose a lot of jobs. So nobody knows at this point. I think we've seen evidence for probably both sides of that, but we don't know what the net is ultimately going to be. But if it were to turn out that we were having a net decrease in jobs as a result of AI, I wouldn't be surprised to see the government beef up Social Security benefits and beef up incentives for people to retire earlier as opposed to getting laid off and losing their jobs. Like this would be a way for them to get extra benefits so that they can retire and have the income that they need to retire while at the same time AI is creating fewer jobs out there. Now,
That's right.
I don't think I'm in the camp of AI is going to be a big net decrease in jobs out there.
Sure.
I think there's so many opportunities for what it can do that there'll be a big transition phase for sure, which it could be very problematic, but longer term, I think it's going to be, a net job creator, but I could be totally wrong.
I know. We will see. That time will tell. That's for sure.
Time with yes.
Well, we call it creative destruction, right? One industry is destroyed,
Yes.
and with the new creations that occur, and the standard of livings across the world end up becoming better. If you look at net poverty worldwide, it's come down significantly in the last 20, 30, 40 years, and technology has taken over. So, I mean, again, there's that Pollyanna big picture strategic view of things being better, of standards of living being better, global integration being better. And some jobs are eliminated while new ones are created.
The first time that any industry, especially in the U.S., has gone through transformation. I mean, we saw this in the Industrial Revolution and other periods where a lot of jobs were tied to farming, and then all of a sudden you came out with tractors and other equipment that we don't need as many manual people on the farm anymore. And there are articles I think actually I'm going to share them in our upcoming market update webinar that are their headlines back in the 20s, 30s, and even before about what's going to happen to all the jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And it all worked out. Now, again, not to say this is exactly how that happened, but there are definitely some historical precedents on situations that have had a lot of similarities. So.
Yeah. Well, it's the transition that's the really difficult part. As jobs get lost and new ones get created,
you gotta have
oftentimes
time to retrain the workforce.
Exactly. The people who are losing the jobs aren't necessarily the ones who are the best fit for the new jobs that are being created. So that's the tricky part, and that's where government really has to get things figured out to help with that transition.
I think Steve's going to be running for president. He's going to sovereign wealth fund, universal basic income. You got all the.
I didn't go UBI. I don't think we touched on that. But
you are very well spoken.
What ultimately the solution is, Steve. Come on,
Yeah. I don't know about that, but definitely throwing some opinions around here. But
that's why we have things.
Yeah. So maybe this is a whole separate episode, but we're talking about AI and jobs. I mean, just in our profession, in financial services, there's talk all the time now about what is the impact that AI is going to have on financial advising. And when do you get a human? When do you get an AI? It's like there's a lot of talk about that. Yeah. Again, that's a whole different conversation, but it's not like we're talking about this in theory. It's like this is really impacting what Keen Wealth does and what other financial services firms do, whether they're registered investment advisory fiduciaries like Keen Wealth, or whether they're the large financial services companies like the Vanguards and Fidelities and Schwab's out there. Everyone's working on it. Everyone's developing their strategies. Some people are being super bold in what they're doing with AI and how they're implementing it. And I think I've said this before, it's a fascinating time to be alive. And I just hope that I'll be around for a few more decades here to see how all of this unfolds.
I'm betting on you.
Yeah.
I'm betting on you, buddy.
Right. Well, guys, time flies here. So I think probably a good time to wrap here. I don't know, Bill, if you want to make one final thought here as we wrap it up.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, we've done almost 300 episodes here, and the recurring theme of every single program that we have is that really to make a solid decision for yourself and your family, it all starts with having a financial plan in place where you've gotten honest and truthful. Not that you're being dishonest or untruthful, but a lot of people are just disorganized. Okay, so what I mean by that is you get organized,
they just don't
and you
know.
Get truthful, and you get about your assets. You lay things out. What do you have? What do you have debt-wise? What do you have coming in today and in the future? And you really start to make some projections around what the future can look like and what you're capable of doing, because we're trying to design lives going forward that are truly inspiring. well, if you log onto our website or you see our website, just go to the public site. It says inspiring confidence today and in your future. And you have to have clarity about where you stand today to have confidence about where you're going in the future. And even our talk today, yeah, we talked about Australia. It doesn't apply to the US, but a lot of the themes do, the thematic thoughts around how these things integrate. But whether it's your current taxes or your future income taxes, but how you're going to insure for health before 65 or after 65, or how your estate plan is set up so you can put your head on the pillow at night knowing that if something were to happen to you, even today, that your affairs would be handled. They are in order, knowing they're in order, and looking at what income you could have down the road and how you could help charities of your choice. Yeah, now, not just at the end when you're gone, and kids along the way as well. It's actually a very fascinating intersection of all these dynamics and details, but that it starts with a financial plan. And to us, it's fun, it's exciting, there's opportunity to make things more efficient, to optimize those things so that folks can go out into the world and be the best versions of themselves. I didn't mean to get high level here, but that really is what it's about. It's helping folks be the best versions of themselves with the resources they have, be good stewards of those resources. Again, interesting topics, how it all lays out today. And I think it's informative to our listeners and viewers. And I always look forward to our episodes. You guys, it's fun. Sometimes we argue, sometimes we banter, sometimes we have a little dust up here or there. But that's good, right? We want to talk about these things in a way that our listeners can also lean in and think about their thoughts and how they view these things as well. So always look forward to our episodes.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Bill and Matt, as always. And for you listeners, if you're a longtime listener, you know the drill here, which is please tell all your friends and colleagues about the show. We'd love for them to subscribe. You can subscribe to both the podcast as well as the video on YouTube. We got a nice YouTube channel going there. And if you have any questions or comments, please make sure that you send those to us. We love answering listener questions on the air here. So you can get to us at keenwealthadvisors.com. And we appreciate you being part of this. And we look forward to having you all participate on the next episode of Keen on Retirement.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
The Steve Sandusky Advisor Network and Belay Advisor are not affiliated with Keen Wealth Advisors. Opinions expressed by Steve are his own and not necessarily the opinions of Keen Wealth Advisors. Keen Wealth Advisors is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Keen Wealth Advisors and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. The contents of this podcast are intended for the residents of the United States of America. No advice may be rendered by Keen Wealth Advisors unless a client service agreement is in place. This program is intended for informational purposes only and should not be construed as advice on or a recommendation of any particular investment, strategy, or as tax or legal advice for your specific situation. Keen Wealth Advisors is not a tax or legal advisor. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your licensed professional prior to investing. Information in this program was compiled from sources believed to be reliable. Due to the constant state of data changing, we do not guarantee the timeliness or the accuracy of the information provided. Our views or opinions at the time you are listening to the podcast may be different than they were when the podcast was recorded. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any prices that are referenced or market forecasts are as of the date stated and are not necessarily our opinions moving forward. As always, please remember, investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. This podcast is not allowed to be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced without permission from Keen Wealth Advisors.